Welcome into Film Tank, the weekly podcast that covers both new and classic cinema. On this episode of Film Tank, we get into the holiday season by reviewing the first Die Hard film starring Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman. If you would like to get in touch with Film Tank, you can always email us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Film Tank Show. And you can listen to all of our episodes on our website, filmtankshow.com, or on iTunes. And now, here are your hosts, Nick Cheney, Toussaint Egan, and myself, Alex Diekman. Hey there, everybody, and welcome in to episode 175 of Film Tank. I am Alex Diekman, along with my only co-host for this very special episode, and that is Nick Cheney.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, buddy.
What are we going to do for 200?
I don't know.
I mean, we have to do something special.
We're gonna do like a unusual pick because we did Predator for 100.
Right, Predator was the result of a running gag, although it didn't run as far as I wanted it to. So that's more of a deep cut gag.
Yeah.
By the time I came up, but that's okay.
We should pick like a really good film for episode 200.
You know what? I'm with you.
Okay.
Now, for us to decide,
I was gonna say it's up for interpretation.
To come to the same agreement on to what is good. But you know what? That'll just make A, our task harder, fine.
Yes.
But B, the movie we pick that much more special.
It'll be great because I'll say something like the original Godfather.
Yes.
And Toussaint will say some anime film.
Yes.
And you will probably want to do some blaxploitation film.
Why not?
I mean, we're going to be on different spectrums, I think. So it'll be.
Hey, you're not giving me the shaft.
So we've got the good news is we have some time. The bad news is we will probably pick the week before, so we aren't going to use that time.
True. So
that's okay. So something to look forward to, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like next summer is when that'll probably.
It's got to be next year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It'll be 52, 25. We don't do one every week. So it'll be summer-ish next year, sometime in 2019.
We've been doing this for how long? How many years?
It'll be, I think, February. It'll be 4 full years we've been doing it.
Oh, shit.
I know.
So, that's nothing. I mean, nothing for 6 months more.
Oh, yeah, no.
Compared to the 4 years.
We've been at this for...
Okay, we also have to figure out what our 5-year anniversary will be.
There you go.
When that comes up, I mean. It's not going to be this February.
No, it'll be the following year.
Okay, so we got time on that, too.
Got time.
Okay.
Maybe we'll do, at some point, a top 6 favorite episode.
Of the show?
Of this show.
That would be very meta.
I know.
But the problem is I don't listen to these episodes. I don't remember what the hell we've said. In fact, I don't know that I'm comfortable with remembering what I've said on.
You could take the time to go back and listen to all of them and decide.
Yeah. What am I, my mother?
Okay.
Because she listens to every episode.
Does she really?
No.
I don't think so. So anyways, we'll figure all that out. We got some time. So something to look forward to in the future. Episode 200 and then the 5th anniversary episode if we're still going.
Hell yeah.
And we're still alive.
Well, we're going to go for 5 years no matter what. I feel like now it's just like a goal.
Yeah.
We don't want to be that whatever. Like, oh yeah, we quit after 4 years and 11 months.
Yeah. It would be a good...
Even if, like, you quit, I will be here.
Okay.
By myself.
Not recording anything.
I'll ask Kenny for the key, because I know he still has a key. And I'll get my own laptop, and I'll be like, hey, guys, welcome to Film Tank. I'm here with myself.
And you won't be talking to anybody, so it'll be great. You won't be recording it.
Well, at least we'll finally get down to the salient and intelligent discourse that I feel like this podcast has been lacking for 4 years.
You'll just spend 4 hours talking about Lars von Trier films. It'll be great.
It will be.
Fantastic. So, enough about what we're going to be looking forward to in the future. Let's focus on the present. And the present is holiday season. A great time of year. One of my favorite. I know one of yours as well.
Absolutely.
And this year, unlike in the past couple years, or 3 years, I guess, where we've focused on holiday classics and we've done some new films that don't have anything to do with holidays and some that are older. I think this year we're going to spend almost the entirety of December talking about Christmas films, holiday films, whatever you want to call them, that aren't necessarily Christmas films.
That's correct.
And the first one is what some people consider to be a Christmas classic. Some people consider to have nothing to do with Christmas. And most people who are fans of action films just consider to be a fantastic classic action film. And that is the original Die Hard, which came out in 1988 and was directed by John McTiernan, who also directed the original Predator.
Oh, yeah.
And also was the director of one of Nick's favorite films of all time, Last Action Hero.
Oh, yeah. Wow. I don't like John McTiernan.
Also, though, the cinematographer of this film was
DuPont,
Wright, who directed two of my favorite action films of all time, the original Speed and Twister.
and shot one of my favorite films of all time, Roar, where he was famously mauled and had to go to the... No, seriously, him and Melanie Griffith were like the two biggest casualties. Not fatalities, but as far as injuries go, I think I forgot what happened to him, but either he got scalped or I don't know. But and to be fair, when you watch that movie, it makes sense because he's not shooting from afar.
Nope, he's right up in the action. So, this film, the original Die Hard, not like its four successors, follows John McClane, officer of the New York Police Department, as he tries to save his wife, Holly Gennaro, and several others who were taken hostage by German terrorist Hans Gruber during a Christmas party at the Nakatomi Plaza in Los Angeles. So the film does star Bruce Willis in what was probably his career-defining role, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think he's really ever matched this type of notoriety.
No, I mean, people always remember him in Pulp Fiction and other films, too. But the original Die Hard is probably the highest peak that he found in his career.
Yes.
And also Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, who's remembered for a lot of other things other than Die Hard, but he is also remembered for this role, so he had a very nice career. And he was a much better actor than Bruce Willis will ever be.
Yes.
Yeah. So also here, Bonnie Bedelia, playing John McClane's wife, Holly, and then also some other people.
Holly, like at Christmas time.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
It's almost like that was...
What?
Yeah. And then also you have some other people here like Reginald Vell Johnson showing up and taking some time away from Family Matters. Actually, this film was before Family Matters even started, which is very interesting.
True.
But he shows up here as Sergeant Al Powell, the police officer who just happens to stumble upon this whole terrorist plot.
He was just at a Quickie Mart.
I know. Just trying to get some Twinkies and other things.
Oh, yeah.
He also seems to know every single nutritional percentage of what is in a Twinkie, which I found interesting.
I'm guessing Twinkies are a vice for him, and he's watching his weight.
And he's read the back of the packages many times?
Absolutely, a man like that, he's got to shit a lot. What do you do when you shit? You read things. Like the Twinkie.
Yeah, at least back in the good old days when they didn't have iPhones and other devices.
Even if he had an iPhone, he'd probably be Googling it. Be like, what's the fat in a Twinkie?
Yeah.
Siri, ignore that.
How much?
That was just a plop.
Oh, my God. Also, Paul Gleason here as the police... It's not police chief.
Deputy chief.
Deputy chief.
Yes.
Who many people remember from The Breakfast Club. But he is here playing Deputy Police Chief Dwayne something. He gets made fun of for his name. Also to Hart Bochner as the great character of Hart Ellis. He's amazing in this
Yep.
film. Meets his demise and is weirdly a coke addict. And then
Yeah.
also
There's a lot of vices going on in this extremely white collar place.
Oh, yeah. And then two of the best performances coming out of the terrorists are done by Alexander Gudanov, who plays Carl, and also to Clarence Gayard Jr., who plays Theo, the black gentleman who is hacking everything and making bizarre comments all the time.
Yeah.
So, this film is wonderful, and I'm a big fan of it, and I guess I'll start us off talking about Die Hard. I did not see this film for the first time until probably like a decade ago. Never was into the Die Hard series. Still, I'm really not. I've seen this and parts of Die Hard with a Vengeance and Live Free or Die Hard, but I've never sat down and watched the entirety of any others in the series other than this one. And I don't think I need to. Don't think anybody really needs to. Although some of the other films in the series are apparently quite enjoyable, and I will probably watch them at some point. But at any rate, this film really delivers on a lot of levels for me, and I think this film is quite delightful, as it really just lands a lot of notes for me that make it a fun 2-hour and 8-minute watch. It's a really fun action movie slash, not caper, but it's there's the heist element going on here with the extremely stereotypical Eastern European thieves, led wonderfully by Alan Rickman. And at every corner, it seems like this film is, I don't want to say homaging itself to Westerns, but it's definitely trying to say, here is a Western in a action heist package. And I just love it, like many people do. It's a very fun watch that at times can be a little bit slow, but for me, I don't really even feel it during those times that are not fast-paced, action-packed throughout the entirety of the runtime. And I just really enjoy it. I think Bruce Willis is perfectly utilized here for what he can do, which is very little. But he's just saying lines over and over and reciting dribble for the most part throughout. And when he does have conversations that are trying to be somewhat meaningful, most of them are good, other than his weird send-off thing that he tells Al to tell his wife, which is awful. But at the same time, when you get from point A to point Z in this film, it delivers on almost every level it could, and it's a very enjoyable film to me, and one that is just extremely compulsively watchable, I would say. And that's really what you want out of a popcorn action film that really tries to deliver a message, but it doesn't need to. And it also doesn't go out of its way to make you feel like the message is more important than the silly action film that you're watching. So I'm a fan, and I'm glad this film is out there, and could have easily just stayed as being one film. So
Yeah.
that's my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I very much enjoy it. I also don't really love it. It's one of those things where it's like I pretty much like it is a classic, whether I think it is or not, but it's just not ever going to join my personal canon, so to speak. But as far as what it does well, though, I mean, it's the action is extremely well done, and it comes from an era that is long lost of actual gunfights with real sets and whatnot, and that's just always a blast to watch, especially when you're watching something that is as legendary in the genre and of its caliber and of its peers as something like Die Hard. And yeah, Bruce Willis, who I think is awful, to be honest. I actually liked his later stuff a lot more than his early stuff, which is funny because, like, the older he gets, the less he tries, and I think that actually the less he tries, the better he is on screen. Like, kind of like him more in things like Unbreakable and Moonrise Kingdom, where he just kind of doesn't have to do a whole lot, so to speak. But that's just me. But here he is definitely okay. Like, he's not casted outside of his element.
No, this is very much already mentioned Speed, but something like Keanu Reeves being cast in that.
Yeah.
They're not looking for someone to win an Oscar here.
No.
They're looking for someone to deliver a stupid cop performance.
True. But to be fair, I will always take somebody like Keanu's blandness over Bruce Willis's blandness, to be completely honest, for my own taste. But he does the job here. He mostly excels when the movie counts, which is the action. Like that, he does sell. So I can see why he became a big thing. Because unlike some people in his genre who maybe can act better, they probably look a little funnier carrying a machine gun than Bruce Willis does. So it walks a tightrope between that kind of average Joe / actual cop who has to save the day. But for the most part, it definitely works. I do think it's a little too long.
Yeah.
I think it could have been 20 minutes shorter at the sweet spot at least, and maybe even cut out some characters who I even like Argyle or something, just because by the end, I mean, I like Argyle, but also checking in with him like 3 or 4 times throughout the whole movie did not really add up too much.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just one of those things that I noticed this time, whereas before I didn't really, whatever. I think this movie is starting to hit diminishing returns for myself now that I've seen it 3 times in the past few years or so.
Yeah.
But I obviously absolutely love Alan Rickman. He's the best part of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And for good reason. I think that he's the only reason why this movie became like a classic. Like, I think it would have been a hit with Bruce Willis, but I think we're still watching it to this day because of Alan Rickman.
Yeah, his line delivery is fantastic. I mean, that's a guy who really, throughout his career, was typecast into that role, and it was never a problem.
Yeah.
Like, even in Harry Potter, he's really giving you the exact same line delivery he's giving in this film. And that's why they hired him.
True. But unlike some people, he's kind of got that chameleon effect where he can look very different in each role.
Sure.
Like literally just putting facial hair on him makes him look much different than someone like Snape, which is very creepy in some ways. Like some people, they look the same. They just look like they have peach fuzz or something. But no, he's fantastic. A lot of the supporting players, though, are fantastic. Reginald as Al, and the Breakfast Club principal as the...
oh, I hope that's not a hostage.
Yeah, but that was great. A lot of great lines like that. The 2 FBI agents were a little too dorky for my taste. Like,
they show up late and they leave quick.
Yeah, so, it was just kind of random. Like it felt like those are kind of some of the characters I'm talking about where I'm like, I could watch a movie without them, basically. I just feel like that's just adding a whole other layer that we don't need because it's already not even complicated, but it's already full enough of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like the film adds them in as almost like a plot device as they come in to go by the book and cut the power so the safe opens.
Kind of what the Breakfast Club deputy was kind of doing too, as far as like not straying and listening to Al and whatnot. So it just felt like a slightly more, authoritarian version of what came before. But there's just a lot of fun stuff to watch here. I absolutely love the way it's shot. Jan Dubont. I think J.J. Abrams must love this movie because there's a lot of lens flare, and I actually think it looks pretty great. There's something about it that actually gives the entire movie texture, and it's crazy because in some of these scenes where some of the action is taking place, is Bruce Willis is walking through what is, in most cases, like in real life, is just boring office space, decorated, but just boring, white, what do I
A
call
lot
it?
of it is unfinished.
Yeah, unfinished construction, whatever, fluorescent light, whatever. But the way Jan Dubont moves throughout it just makes it look like a battle royale, place, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, the way the cinematography moves through this is actually somewhat similar, and it's mostly I'm thinking about it because of the business office setting, but it reminds me of a little bit of the climactic scene in Collateral, which is wonderful, which moves quickly through the fantastic Michael Mann film. If you have not seen it, you really should, because it is a wonderful film starring
Yes,
Tom
it is.
Cruise and Jamie Foxx. And anyways, that moves through and does a great job blocking the characters while also having really solid camera movement. But I do like what you said about J.J. Abrams, because I did think about him when he did this weird camera tilt when they finally get into the vault.
When they start stealing things.
Yeah, and there's a painting in there that it starts on an angle and then tilts to the left. There was no need for that, but it was great.
Yeah. No, it's actually, for a movie that's pretty, I would say, I don't want to say, I'm trying to say a word that's not a pejorative. So it's like, I don't mean like boring, but just for a movie that's very workmanlike, for the moment for them to, when they get in there, for it to play Joy to the World, and then B, for the camera to literally fall off its own axis when they're walking in. It's just perfect. And it should be showy, but it's really not.
No, there's a lot of interesting film choices that were made for this, and for the most part, they all work. And that is something that is not apparent in modern action films. I mean, everything from sound design, just the physical sets that we have throughout, which you mentioned earlier, Nick. I mean, they're wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot have a scene where you're having somebody hanging down an elevator shaft. Now, he's not in a real elevator shaft, but it looks more authentic than a CGI elevator shaft would.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that sucks about these days, that you go along and things that now cost more to do with computers looked better before we had them.
Yeah.
And it kinda
Unless
sucks.
it's a Mission Impossible series, you're looking at something that is just so woefully constructed to trick you instead of excite you.
Yeah. It's a weird uncanny valley type thing instead of feeling authentic.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say is, on that same note, as far as like something like the elevator shaft, his big thing at the end with the fire hose is one of those things where, like, even watching it now, you can understand that it's a mixture of a lot of different things, as far as like a fake backdrop, but like there's still a human being in that shot and whatnot, and that's also kind of what we're missing. It's not just a person in a green suit who's a stuntman who, you know what I mean, like where it's just so far beyond anything plausible, whatever. And that shot is fantastic. Just the cross editing between him outside the building with the actual gun teetering on, or not the gun, that was the elevator shaft. The fire hose teetering on pulling him aside and whatnot is all that's just really, really great.
Which is a more iconic shot from this film? Him jumping off the top of the building, which I think is the answer, or him with the lighter in the air conditioning vent?
My personal feeling is him with the lighter. Only because I feel like I've seen it in more promotional material. So I don't know if it's necessarily more iconic in the sense of what people remember, but like I've seen that in parodies and homages.
Sure.
People jumping off a building, I feel like, is not as diehard as something like The Vent.
Okay.
Just because I feel like that is diehard in a nutshell. A guy literally moving around as best.
I mean, they're the two most iconic shots from this film.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're both in the same ballpark. But I'm with you. Although I would think that the other shot of him jumping off the building with the fire behind him with the hose around him.
I mean, as a sequence, it's probably the most memorable sequence. I guess I'm thinking more still image.
Sure.
So, just literally him sitting there.
Kind of trapped in the air conditioning vent
Yeah.
with a lighter. That's the other thing. this film does a really good job of not wasting plot points throughout. Everything down to the cigarette lighter that he grabs earlier in the film, to the explosive that he eventually uses, all the way down to the very end with the watch, which is mentioned early in the film, which feels like a stupid throwaway line, and it ends up working. I mean, even the very first part of this film is literally a plot device to have a reason for him to not have his shoes on throughout the entirety of the film.
True.
So, and I have to admit, the first time I sat down and watched this, I paid no mind to the opening scene. I just thought it was a bizarre thing.
Like, oh, he's a cop who's got a neurosis.
Yeah. No, I guess I was thinking more about the I was thinking
that's where I went with that.
No, that's understandable. I'm thinking more about the other passenger sitting next to him, who's giving him this whole story about take your shoes off and bend your feet, and it's just like that seemed odd. But at the same time, I mean, it makes sense. And there's a lot of those little moments here that all of them aren't stupid, which is great because it makes sense. And everything down to the before he's murdered, the stupid coworker Ellis having a Coke delivered to him after he clearly has a cocaine.
I was going to say
that
can't be an unintentional wordplay joke. I don't know. I refuse to believe that that's not on purpose.
No, I'm sure it is. And it was great. And go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, as far as like smart thing that I feel like just wouldn't happen in a thriller today. His meeting with Hans before he truly knows it's Hans, like that can only happen in the era before cell phones and whatnot. You know what I mean? Because if he was any more equipped, both of them would be able to know what the other looked like without having to stretch too far. So that kind of, now obviously they're both, as you watch the entire scene, at least somewhat aware and assuming, but just the tension between him giving him a gun and whatnot it's just very well done.
And that also relates to probably the best plot device throughout the film, which is the photo of the McClane family, which Holly puts down, and then also at the end it comes back with him picking it up and looking at it and putting all the pieces together. And that's pretty much perfect, especially in a film from 1988. It just works very well. And not that you can't see it coming from a mile away, but at the same time, if I had not seen this or heard about this film and seen it for the first time, I probably would have thought nothing of it first time. So,
and honestly, seeing things coming is not always a bad thing. It sometimes means that the script is actually doing everything right. You're just paying close enough attention. Like there's a difference between something where like a film, I would say, overly telegraphs compared to something where a film just actually lays just good groundwork.
Right. I mean, not the same exact thing, but it's like a good horror film. Like the audience should know what's going on before the characters find out.
Exactly. If the audience knows that there's an axe behind that door, but the character doesn't, then you're just waiting for the character to open that door to get that, or little things like that.
So, what I was going to bring up was something you already hit on earlier, which was Alan Rickman's line deliveries and just his performance overall as Hans Gruber. I personally think it doesn't get any better for me than when we are first introduced to him and he's slowly walking up with the guy who's the president of the company and having the weird one-way door conversation with him where he's having a conversation with him, but there's nothing reciprocated, and it's really bizarre. And he brings up all kinds of things like men's fashion and other things that the gentleman owns. And again, there's nothing coming from the other end of this two-person discussion, but he's talking as if it's a conversation. It's really bizarre, and it just works really well. And pardon me. Alan Rickman is just so great in this film. I know you already said that, but it's just bears repeating.
Absolutely.
Because he's just awesome here. The scene when he's giving his demands and he's just randomly saying stuff that he saw.
His throwaway line about he's I heard about them in Time magazine.
Yeah. Even the Carl, the head or the second in command terrorist, is giving him this look like, what the fuck? And that was just perfect. But it is cool when you see this film second time, third time, whatever, how the plan is laid out. And it is really a very well thought out heist by these people, even though they're willing to murder people. So they're not cool necessarily.
Well,
like
it's one of those things
Danny
where
and the gang.
It doesn't seem like a suicide mission if it were to go right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they seem like they have this really actually good plan. And
literally the only thing and that's kind of the whole point of the movie.
Yeah.
But if John McClane wasn't there, it would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have not known would hit them, and there you go.
Yeah.
No, but Alan Rickman is absolutely wonderful here, and he delivers a fantastic performance in a silly action film. So, good for him.
Good for him. Mm-hmm. He's so good.
Mm-hmm. So that being said, although it was fun to revisit this film and talk about it and hit on a little bit of everything, I think, from this movie, this isn't a movie that you could talk for 2 hours about, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
So we can go to ratings, and
right.
Nick, I will let you go first.
Thank you so much, Alex.
You are welcome so
Whew.
much.
I think this is certainly a delight. It's a lot of fun. Some great performances from Mr. Rickman and from the limited capabilities of Mr. Willis. And as we mentioned before, the cinematography and the script, I think, really shine here, and almost in subtle ways, because we kind of take for granted what blockbusters used to actually put the kind of effort into. And I'm not saying that because, quote-unquote, all blockbusters today are bad or anything like that. But there used to be this kind of prestige around movies that weren't sci-fi fantasy, I guess is kind of what I want to say. Because right now, superheroes, I would say, is in that realm of sci-fi fantasy. Where we would get these kind of boilerplate thrillers, but they always got a ton of money and an actual third or fourth pair of eyes on the script, and nothing was really done lackluster, and you get productions like these. And so Die Hard is obviously a product of that. I kind of take umbrage with the people who champion this as a Christmas movie, not because it's not a Christmas movie, but because this is such a weak alternative Christmas movie pick. There are so many other movies that also are quote-unquote Christmas movies that are, in my opinion, better or just more fun picks. So it just seems...
Want to give a couple examples?
Oh, like Eyes Wide Shut, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, there's just a million out there, and those aren't even naming movies that are personally my favorite. Well, Eyes Wide Shut is, but things like Metropolitan by Whit Stillman. I mean, those are deeper cuts. But Die Hard is just kind of, other than the opening and the closing and a few Merry Christmas sprinkled in, I guess I'll give it this. It is a Christmas movie because I love movies that take place in the season. Mm-hmm. But this should not be the gold standard for off the beaten path Christmas movies. Basically, is my feeling. But I have a lot of fun with this. It's a 3.5 out of 5 for me. And it's something I'm probably never going to love, but I will definitely rewatch it anytime someone wants to.
Yeah. It is certainly compulsively watchable. And since you hit on it, I will mention my 2 cents on this and its distinction as or not as a Christmas film. I always include it in the discussion simply because it is a great film to throw in that is not a quote-unquote standard Christmas film. Kind of like you're mentioning, there are other things like Eyes Wide Shut that revolve around Christmas. But this is a weird film that seems to just hit a lot of weird notes in the season that every year around this time, like, not that I've watched it every year, it's not something like It's a Wonderful Life or The Muppet Christmas Carol, but at the same time, it is a very easy watch around the holiday season that, for whatever reason, gets me in the mood and also hits a different note than a standard Christmas film.
My biggest grievance with this as a quote-unquote Christmas film
Mm-hmm.
is there's not enough Christmas lights.
Yeah.
Like, literally, something like Eyes Wide Shut, that movie is filled to the brim with Christmas lights, almost purposefully so when it comes to symbolism and such, which we'll probably talk on an episode one day, because I'm guessing we are going to talk about that movie.
We need to get Tucson to watch it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's probably the most important thing.
Yeah. And but this movie, what makes no sense to me is that this takes place in an extremely tech-heavy company, and there are no Christmas lights anywhere.
Yeah,
There's a tree.
Yeah, there
there's-
are very few Christmas lights.
Yeah. So I mean, if I would have just saw some blood or some bullets fly past some beautiful red, blue, orange, green lights, like that would have just solidified it as like a Christmas classic. But it's missing that pizzazz, or a little more snow. But it's LA, so I get that. But that's why you got to put the lights on.
Well, it could be. I will.
That or Kurt Russell as Santa Claus has to show up.
Did you watch that?
I did, yeah.
Was it worth it or not? No.
Yes and no.
Uh,
It is in the sense that it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do want to see Kurt Russell be Santa Claus, he's very good at being Santa Claus.
Okay.
But yeah, no,
Okay.
not worth it.
Okay. Good to know. Anyways, the Christmas movie debate aside, this is teetering on a action film masterpiece for me. I definitely think this is a all-time action classic, and it taking place at Christmas time is just the icing on the cake. I give this a super high rating of 4.5 out of 5, and love almost every single moment of this film as it's put together in a wonderful package and just delivered perfectly to the audience, as this is a weird film that found a sweet spot of telling a story within an action film and being competent, which is another thing that's sorely missed these days from these kind of films. But at the same time, this laid the groundwork for a lot of other action films throughout the last 30 years.
Die Hard 2.
I was going to say a lot of Bruce Willis films.
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Live Free or Die Hard, and then the last one, which nobody liked.
So I got to ask you a question really quick.
Okay.
In one of my film circles of friends, the big debate is always, what kind of a person are you? Speed or Die Hard?
Oh.
So which one do you prefer? Oh, it's a tough one, eh?
It is.
It's so funny because in that circle, which is quite a few people, it's always like very like battle cry. Like people have their picks and they do not.
They're in the same ballpark for me because I love Speed.
Yeah.
And I will say there is definitely a nostalgia aspect where I mentioned with Die Hard, there isn't, like I picked up on this 10 years ago, whatever it was, where my brothers took me to see Speed in the theater when I was a little kid, so it was like one of the first rated R films that I saw that I actually kind of understood what was going on. And Speed is awesome and off the wall, and it has almost as good of a villain, if not better. Dennis Hopper is giving a
certainly
fantastic...
campier, which I don't mean in a bad way.
That's fine.
Just as far as like fun to watch and whatnot.
No, but it is a very entertaining film. If I had to pick one, I probably would say Die Hard's a better movie. But I would probably watch Speed before I watch Die Hard.
I got you.
I am a big fan of what that film's doing, and
I still need to watch Speed in the sense that it's been at least 10 years since I've seen it.
yeah, we talked about watching that earlier this year, and we didn't, and we should really just do that at some point.
We'll do that.
So maybe we'll get together and watch that like this weekend or something.
Whoa.
I know.
Are you asking me out?
If you'll have me.
I'd love to.
So, if any of you out there have any thoughts on Die Hard, feel free to send them on to us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. Coming up on our next episode, we'll continue with our December plan of discussing films that revolve around Christmas but aren't really Christmas films. And that is, we're going to do our third James Bond film or second? I don't know.
We've done
I know we did Spectre.
But I don't think we've done anything else.
Okay, I was thinking that we did one of the other ones, but I don't think we did.
No.
Now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, so it's our second.
Okay. Probably not our last. But our second James Bond film, which is an easy one to remember because it is the only one starring George Lazenby.
Yeah.
And that is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. This came out in 1969, and it is actually Nicholas's favorite James Bond film.
It's actually one of my favorite films of all time.
Ah,
I've watched it quite a few times now, ever since I first discovered it. And, well, a friend of the show, Sarah, who was on the Persona episode, forced me to watch it. And it was that's definitely what started me watching and taking, not seriously, but taking account and appreciation of Bond.
do you think that it's just because I'm a 31-year-old dude that I'm much more into everything post Connery when it comes to Bond? Because if you look back at, like, historically how people have viewed James Bond, they view Sean Connery's era as, like, the gold standard.
Right.
And even though I've never sat down and watched an entire one of those films, although I've seen lots of parts of them, I've never really been like, boy, I need to sit down and watch all those someday.
No, I think you're not alone in the sense that Sean Connery is not my favorite Bond either.
Yeah.
In fact, I actually like Sean Connery Bond movies the worse they are as a film, because then I think his performance and his, shall we say... Well, actually, I think his performance is actually good. Mm-hmm. Like, he does embody the suave of James Bond. Mm-hmm. So I guess I won't say his performance, but his, shall we say, mannerisms as he deals with females and hooligans and whatnot are better matched by a more outlandish script, so to speak. Like, I actually really like Diamonds Are Forever, which is one of the worst Bond films ever made, because I feel like everything is firing on a lot of cylinders there. Excuse me. But, no, you're not alone in the sense that I prefer pretty much everybody after him. Not everybody. I gotta say, my personal favorite, probably because I grew up with him, is Pierce Brosnan. He just kind of looks like what I envisioned to be Bond, but I say that as someone who probably was first introduced to Bond through GoldenEye on Nintendo 64, so I'm a little biased when it comes to what I think of when I think of James Bond.
Yeah.
But the movie we're going to talk about, George Lazenby, who I think is great, that movie is my favorite Bond film. Mm-hmm. So, anyway.
And it is always really easy to remember George Lazenby, as he only got one shot at Bond.
He did good.
And everyone else has gotten at least 4, where other than Timothy Dalton.
Yeah, he got 2. That's because they wanted Brosnan at the same... Like, actually, that's the story behind that, is that they were going to go with Brosnan that early, but he had contractual obligation, so they're like, okay, let's get somebody else. They got Timothy Dalton, and after 2 movies, they're like, Brosnan, you ready to go? And he was like, yeah. Excuse me, I'm dying over here.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and then Timothy Dalton was no more.
Yeah, even though his movies aren't that bad, in my opinion.
And we'll talk more about it probably next week, but the hot stove on the James Bond front is still cooking pretty well, because now that Danny Boyle has stepped aside from the next James Bond film, it seems like the entirety of that universe is back completely up for grabs. It's not a sure thing that Daniel Craig's going to be back. There's this continuous lingering rumor of Idris Elba becoming the next James Bond, which, okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, James Bond is in such a weird place right now, but I also think it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a series that has been all over the place from the beginning for the most part. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just think it's time to do a whole new Bond. And that's not to say that you have to recast anything else. Like, if you want to bring back Christopher Walken as Blofeld, like, that's fine, too. Like, M was able to transcend 2 different Bonds, and different Qs were able to, too, and whatnot. So that's why I don't understand their hang-up about recasting Daniel Craig, because as much as I obviously love Daniel Craig, and I know people like him in the role, I don't think he's that big of a draw when it comes to, like, actual ticket sales of who Bond is.
The funny thing about it is, if Spectre had not happened, I could see why they were pushing to get him back.
Absolutely.
Because Skyfall is, I think, probably the best Bond film I've ever sat and watched in its entirety.
Yeah.
And it also did very well at the box office.
Yep.
And not that Spectre was bad, or it was a failure at the box office, but it did not live up to expectations.
No, and I think that movie clearly showed that they could go ahead with a new direction if they wanted to at this moment. Like, the iron does not have to strike again, basically.
So that's why I'm with you, that the fact that this has actually gone on for almost 2 years now. Of this
Like,
weird...
if they're that invested in James Bond, why are they so hung up on something that I don't think is as essential as they somehow think it is, basically?
Yeah. And I'm a little weird that they're just going to pick somebody who's just like a very... Like, Tom Hiddleston, like, I could see him. See, that's what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, no, I hope not.
Having some very uninspiring choice and being like, here you go. And it's like, okay.
No, and I don't want them to do some kind of quote-unquote crazy pick, like, I don't know, like, pick some kind of comedic actor who's going to do
James
more...
Corden.
Something like that. I mean, not literally him, but, you know, like someone who's known for their comedy, but then in this role they're going to be more serious, whatever. But I do want them to go a slightly lighter route, because I love the Daniel Craig films for what they were, but I also think that we could use another Lazenby and Connery, or even Roger Moore.
Yeah.
So...
Well, we'll see. We'll have plenty of time to discuss, because it seems like there's no end in sight. And in all honesty, the next one probably will have Daniel Craig in it.
Oh, yeah.
But... who knows when that'll be happening at this point.
But the other thing, too, really quick, is that if it will have him in it, like, I'm also okay with that. But let's call it his final film. And obviously, you don't need closure in a James Bond film. But let's, let's have the production mean something, and maybe have a little bit of more of an effort than I feel was put into Spectre to give a final hurrah. No, what's her name, just showing up randomly. Monica Bellucci, was she in Spectre? Yeah, I mean, just these one-off things that just meant nothing. And even Dave Bautista in that movie just...
See, the weird thing about Spectre is that may be an all-time just grabbing names that were hot at the moment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was hyped for that film based on who they got and, like, the teaser trailer. And... of course, calling it Spectre, like, that was a big moment in the James Bond fandom, because for the longest time they did not have rights to Spectre stories as far as, like, that name brand. And then it was just, I'm not Blofeld.
Also, too, you said Christopher Walken before.
Did I?
It was awesome.
Whoops.
That would be a much different film.
I mean, I'd watch that.
I'd be down for
Wait,
it.
no, he is in a movie. He's in one of one of the Moors. He's in...
okay.
He's the villain in A View to a Kill,
Okay.
I want to say. I'm going to look that up while you wrap it up.
Okay.
Because I don't want to be wrong.
No, but everybody from Léa Seydoux to Christoph Waltz to Dave Bautista, I mean, you just were hitting all of the people who happened to be somewhat noteworthy at the time. And to...
there he is, yep, View to a Kill.
Look at that. Man.
So yeah, he's already been a Bond villain, because frankly, he's a Bond villain in every movie.
Yep, it's smart. Even that silly Peter Pan thing he did a few years ago. God, that was wonderful. But at the same time, that was a film that really had two big scenes that were noteworthy, which were the giant explosion in the middle of the desert, which was awesome, but it was a 14-second scene, and to that weird tracking shot during the Day of the Dead scene that still is very bizarre.
Yeah, when your most notable things are your opening scene that also doesn't establish much. I'm just saying, like, it was cool to watch, but also I still don't think you or I could tell you, without having watched it recently, what the bearing of that scene was on anything that came
really didn't
after.
have any.
No. And then, yeah, as you said, a 14-second special effects scene, which admittedly looked cool, but, yeah, there's not a lot going on there.
No. So, anyways, we'll talk more about James Bond, and specifically on Her Majesty's Secret Service, coming up on episode 176. Nick, thanks a lot for
Hey, thanks for having me, Alex.
coming out and hanging out and having a couple beers and chatting about Die Hard. As always, it was a fun time. And from Nick and myself, thank you very much to the Film Tank listeners. We'll be back to catch up with you next time.